Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. You'll be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good mic work. Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power.
Listen to the podcast. Subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good mic work commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Saturday, everyone. What's going on? Welcome to your Winged Eagle podcast for February 4th, 2023. We got a lot of stuff to get into today. It's been a busy week in wrestling. We are right off the heels of a very successful WWE Royal Rumble this past weekend, and now we are heading into Elimination Chamber, and of course, it's also WrestleMania season. AEW hasn't been picking their butts either. They've been having a fantastic time. Great Dynamite on Wednesday. Brand new TNT champion. Wrestling is fun right now. Numbers are good. Ratings are good. Interest is good. YouTube numbers are good. Everybody seems to be happy, even though on the WWE side of things, we still have a shitload of turmoil going on, especially as it regards to the sale. So we're going to be getting into that and a lot of wrestling news tidbits, some results, a look ahead to Chamber, to Mania, to what Dynamite has got on tap for this week, what they did last week. The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin's status for this year's WrestleMania and potentially last year's WrestleMania, WWE holding its earnings call, Nick Khan doing an interview with CNBC where he talked about Vince McMahon. We're going to talk about the death of Leaping Lanny Poffo, along with some Jericho Cruise information that's currently ongoing, some ratings, some results, some opinions, and some happiness. That's what's on tap for today. Hope you guys are having a good one. Before I went live, I did no sound checks. Completely forgot, so just bear with me while I make sure you can hear me. All right, I can be seen, I can be heard over here. Usually I check all of that first, and I never got around to it before we went live today because we are 30 minutes early. I've got kind of a busy day at work, so I wanted to get a head start on the podcast. Plus, you guys who are interested and who are NXT fans have NXT Vengeance Day coming up today in just a couple of hours. So right when this podcast wraps up, Vengeance Day will start. I will be heading to work, so I will miss that. Based on the card, I think there's a chance that Grayson Waller beats Braun Breaker for the title. I think he's the next guy in line after Breaker. But at the same time, I can see Breaker retaining because he seems like the type of guy that if they're going to move him up to the main roster, then they do that. He's like a night after WrestleMania type of guy to be moved up. So him dropping the belt here, maybe he retains here and then drops it again in a rematch a little bit closer to Mania. That's maybe my guess there. I don't think Roxanne Perez will drop her title. And other than that, I don't see Dijak winning the North American, and I'm not sure what other matches they have on tap for tonight. But it does look like a pretty decent NXT show for those of you who are interested in NXT. Other than that, we're just going to be getting into a lot of what I talked about here. I'm going to do some shout-outs and hellos, and let you guys know what we have planned for tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a big day on the channel. Doubleheader Sunday we've got going on. The first video we're going to do is going to go live at, I believe it's 1:30 Pacific. It's going to be 3:30 on the East Coast. Yes, 4:30 on the East Coast. 1:30 Pacific in the afternoon tomorrow for members only. This is just a members only watch along, and it's going to be of WCW Monday Nitro, August 4th, 1997. That was the show that Lex Luger beat Hulk Hogan for the WCW title. It's a very famous Nitro. A lot of people have been recommending that we watch this one, and since I've been owing you guys a members-only watch-along anyway, that will be the perfect one. So tomorrow afternoon, we're going to be watching that together just for us members. Then, once we're done, we're going to take a little hour break, and then I'm going to come back for a public watch-along open to everyone of WWE WrestleMania 4. It is now WrestleMania season, so we're going to start watching some WrestleManias up until this year's Mania, which I will be attending in LA. So we're going to kick it off with WrestleMania 4, another show that has been recommended a lot. We will definitely do WrestleMania 3 this year, and maybe some more recent WrestleManias for the younger portion of the audience. So tomorrow is a doubleheader. Neither one of those links are in the description right now, so you got to go over to the page. They're right there in the latest content tab or the watch-alongs tab. You'll see tomorrow's Nitro and WrestleMania 4. 6 hours of good mic work. Kind of shot myself in the foot. I was assuming that the Nitro that we were going to watch was just a normal 2-hour Nitro, but it's not. It's a 3-hour Nitro, so I had to adjust the times because now, not only is Nitro a longer episode than normal, so is WrestleMania. I believe Peacock has WrestleMania 4 as a 3.5-hour runtime on that. So, for those of you joining us for both watch-alongs tomorrow, you might be staying up a little bit later than normal for your Sunday nights. For those of you who have to work early on Monday morning, I apologize for that, but hopefully you can man up, knock back a 5-hour energy, something like that. Hang out with us tomorrow night to watch a lot of classic wrestling. It's going to be fun as we watch Luger and Randy Savage win championships tomorrow, which is kind of interesting since they're Eskimo brothers. Speaking of brothers, we're going to be talking about Lanny Poffo here in just a second. But before we start getting into all of that, let's go over here to the chat, say hello to everybody, and get ourselves rolling for this afternoon. Again, I hope you guys are having a great one. Let me say hi. Try to hit the channel members first. So I'm going to look for those icons next to your name. I want to welcome Tatanani. Hope that t-shirt's fitting you well. Ken Webb is in the house. The Juliet, good to see you there. Elizabeth. Michael Kumo is in the house. We've got Deshaun Robinson. Good to see you, my friend. Luke McAllister is here as well. He's chiming in with a nice super chat. What's up, Greg? Looking forward to Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley as long as Rhea wins. The Bloodline angle is the greatest story I've ever seen. I'm going to be talking about Rhea Ripley and Charlotte in a little while and how deliriously happy I am that they are going in that direction. And I'm with you as long as Rhea Ripley wins. I'm a lot less worried this time than I was at WrestleMania 36, even without the pandemic, even if that match would have taken place at Raymond James. as expected. I still just worry Charlotte getting the win in that building, just like she did over Asuka a couple of years before that, would have just been rough to swallow. And it was hard enough to see them do that to Rhea, especially after I was so high on Rhea. And of course, I thought she would be okay. And then they just kind of stumbled and, dragged their feet with her forever until Vince left. And then Triple H took over and said, okay, we're going to make this girl. And she's had a great 2022, wins the Royal Rumble. She not only needs to go to WrestleMania to beat Charlotte, she needs to beat Charlotte the same way Brock Lesnar beat John Cena at SummerSlam 2014. Charlotte can afford a beatdown like that. She can afford a squash loss easily. She could get pinned in 5 seconds and still go on to win 7 or 8 more world titles before she retires. She's John Cena. So I think it would be a perfect opportunity to make a statement win for Rhea Ripley, to not only beat Charlotte, but beat the shit out of her. That's what I want to see at WrestleMania. But what I want and what WWE does generally are two different things. Good to see Isaac is in the house as well. You're not a channel member, but I do want to thank you, Thomas Aridia, for that $5. Thank you so much, dude. Hey, Greg, currently battling COVID, asymptomatic, so thanks for giving me something to listen to. Well, that's good. At least you're not in hell right now, living in your bed of, body aches, sweats, and pains, and chills, and all that stuff. So please get over that quickly. I had a bout with it last year. It was not fun, but, I was over it in about a week, and absolutely happy to be here to keep you company while you're probably just isolated from the world. So sorry, Thomas, but you're here with all of us, and we wish you well, my friend. Let me see who else is here on the channel member side of things. Don't want to miss anybody. Chaz Medeiros is also here. I also want to welcome Ben Espinoza. I always say that wrong, dude. My bad. Colin Wright is in the house. Denny Downbad, Castellar Garcia, Guardian of Chaos, Matos, Michael, Shellshock, Nicola, Arthur Jones. We've got Vash Starwind. We have King Azza, Chris FX, good to see you. Michael, I'm not sure if I got you. Sonic Plays, William. Right on. Who else? Ronnie Matthews is in the house. Andy Linnell. Sean Ireland, good to see all you guys. Also, I'm going to cruise over here and welcome and thank all of the current channel members. We are about 20 or so members away from 100. So once we get to 100 members or more, we're going to get a kick up on the members-only watch-alongs. And my plan is to do monthly giveaways. But I don't want to do any of that until we can reach 100 members. So please tell your friends, because we are almost there. Currently, we have... Let me see. JCS 186, Chaz Medeiros, Ian Joe Dunn, Motown Slim, Ken Webb, Brett, Titanium Titan, Mango Salsa, Josiah Blevins, Kevin, Red Raven Rucker, Colton, Ramon, MJ, Ruben Litton, Ramon Coffee, Fox Star Killer, The Juliet, Brandon Collier, Andon Carter, Randall Yates, Deshaun Robinson, Zach Palgett, Dre, Sean 2018, Jordan Karg, Financial Truth Academy, Devlin Husband, Luke, Mike Tong, Ian Dunn, Longboard, Sam Piboon, Jeff McMahon, Mikey Too Cool, Luke McAllister, Tar Brehan, Zelius Ward, William Bo Klavlovic, Ashton, Spider XR, XRAR. Sorry, I know that's you, Al, but I have a hard time figuring out what your name means. Zach H, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy, Mike Witt, Jimmy Anderson, C Mac, Mab, Joshua Aparicio, How Wheezy, Spaz Phoenix, Ronnie, Nicole Lensing, Nikita, Marcus the Entertainer, Divine Ricks, Zane G, Chris Barrera, Michael Cuomo, Gary, John J.E. Dennett, Tatanani, Nick Musser, K-Dogs Kennel, Max Pokebra, Spectra, Reese Jones, Pierce, Victor Colon, Isaac, George Morris, Population 420, JJ Leg, and Seth. Thank you very much for all of your memberships and for your support on this channel. I also want to shout out Ramon Coffee, Zach Palgett, Joseph Hudson, Chris Cray, Chris Broski, MJ Parker, Kaylin Scott, Shane, Jordan Hendricker, Connor Delaney, Divine Ricks, Ryan, Sam Piboon, JJ, Darren Piper, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Deshaun Robinson, J Smooth 99, Martin Can, Alex Dredge, Apron Bump, Action Jackson, Bane, Dre, Alan Carter, Big Mike's Wrestling Recap Show, Scotty Cura, Glenn Warnock. Oh my goodness. All right, we got a whole bunch of new Patreon members that I didn't realize. I got to welcome a lot of new people here. I guess I didn't notice this earlier, that there's a whole bunch of new subscribers, and I'm actually going to be adding some content to Patreon real soon, so I'll tell you about that in a minute. But let me continue with these shout-outs here. Bane, Dre, Alan Carter, Big Mike's Wrestling Recap Show, Scotty Cura, Glenn Warnecki, Brandon Yelverton, Michael Tong, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K-Dog's Kennel, Brandon Collier, Ryan Y., Devlin Husband, Steve Myers, Teague Codgill, Alex Dredge, Tyrion Furman, Angela Lawhorn, I'm just making sure this is right. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to finish it up with Naveed and Blake Moran. Okay, I got to go through here again and look at those. I was not reading the active users. I was using the all-time users. I'm like, holy crap, there's a whole bunch of new people. Anywho, thank you to everyone who always donates or supports over on the Patreon page. I will be adding some content to that because, as you guys know, I did kind of start that little side channel a while back called Bald Guy Wrestling. Look it up. And it's where I have been posting a lot of my videos from just various videos I've taken going to wrestling shows, trips, things like that. I thought it would be a good place to kind of dump some of that footage since there is so much of it. And I've been playing around with doing some live edited reactions. I do not live, but some edited reactions. I do the live reactions on our main channel here every week, but I thought that maybe if I could pull off the footage from Peacock, I could do some match reactions, taking the footage that's already recorded from our watch-alongs, splicing up and editing it with the real footage and put it up on Bald Guy. Obviously, I will, use some editing tricks to make sure all of this is okay for YouTube, but I've been watching some editing styles of some people who do movie reactions and things like that, and I thought that might be some fun extra content just to chuck over there. Since these are going to be videos, I can also put them on Patreon as well. So you guys might get some early access to some of those once I finally start getting that going, but I just need to find the time to sit down and edit this stuff. And also, I'm having a little bit of trouble. Maybe some of you can help me if you know anything about this. I know my friend Darren Piper was talking to me a little bit about this in DMs. I've been trying to pull off the pay-per-views off of Peacock. And so I was kind of doing some research, and it looked like this program, the software Keep Streams, seems to be the best one. It's a paid service. You can pull anything off Hulu and Netflix and save it for later. So I thought that would be a good way to, kind of pull off some of this content from Peacock. The problem is I'm having a hard time getting it to complete. Out of the 10 or 15 downloads I've tried, I've only been able to get 2 shows to completely download a couple of pay-per-views, and I would really like to start working on some of that content, but I don't think it's my computer. My computer's fine, but for some reason these downloads aren't being completed, and I would really like to pull the WWE content off of Peacock so it matches up with what I'm reacting to. I know there's lots of other ways to get pay-per-views off of other platforms, but it's Peacock is what I'm interested in order for me to use the current footage that I already have recorded. So that's a little side project I'm working on. Once I can figure out how to get these shows permanently ripped to my computer, so far I'm having a little bit of trouble with it. I'll be able to do a couple of shows, but not the ones I've wanted to do so far. So if anybody has any advice on how to get stuff ripped off of Peacock, I don't mind paying for the service. Let me know maybe what you recommend in a DM if you follow me over on the IG or on the Twitters at Good Mic Work, Twitter at Good Mic Work 1 on the Instagrams. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. As Stone Cold Steve Austin would say, we need to start getting into stuff here because we probably have a longer than normal show. And, oh, that's cool. We need to get into it. I want to shout out Silvermore right now, who just tweets out and quote tweeted me, by popular demand, more of these are available for pre-order now. I think I had something to do with that. Right above my head over here, if you see right there, that WWE logo is a light-up sign that this website Stash Pages makes. Now, our friend Solomonster, a couple of months ago, I think it was like before Christmas, he just randomly posted a couple pictures of his, and I became immediately obsessed. I'm like, what the fuck are those? Where'd you get them? He had like a WCW one and a WWF one that lit up. I'm like, those are cool. So I immediately went into obsess mode, found them, found the website that just makes them by hand. It's called stashpages.us /collections/featured items. So you can go to that website and find these things. And then when it took about 2 months to get here, but when it showed up the other day, I opened it up and posted a couple of pictures on social media and tagged the gentleman that makes them. And a lot of people were asking me in the comments, where'd you get this? Where can I find it? And I was posting the link to a lot of you. And the same thing happened over on Instagram. So I think this gentleman got a whole bunch of requests after seeing the photos that I posted of this thing, and it's very cool. I don't have it lit up right now because it's bright as hell. And if I lit it up right now, it would just be a big white light in the shape of a WWF. But in the dark at night, the thing looks so badass. About $120, well worth it. They have a WWF Attitude scratch logo light up sign available as well. And if he ever makes more of the WCW ones, I will buy those as well. But he currently didn't have any of the WCW ones available. But anyway, shout out to Silvermore on Twitter at Silvamore, Silvamore. You'll see the website, all this stuff over there if you want to check it out. And thank you very much for the quote tweet as I see that right before we're about to resume. All right. Do I owe any other super chats, shout outs? I got you, Thomas. I think I got everybody else. I want to welcome MH Nova. We've got Matos. Anybody else that I might have missed? Jet the Hawk, I see you in here as well. Good to see everybody. Welcome. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend. Thumbs up button. Subscribe. All that stuff. You know what to do. You know the drill. I will stop flapping my gums now because we've been going on and on for about 20 minutes, and we haven't even started the wrestling news. So why don't we start with, unfortunately, a bit of sad news to report. We have experienced yet another death in wrestling. This one is Lanny Poffo, who passed away at age 68. Meltzer is reporting that he believes this is due to heart failure, although I don't believe any official cause of death has been announced yet. 68 is pretty young. Lanny Poffo, of course, was the brother of the Macho Man Randy Savage. He was the one that actually handled Macho Man's induction when he finally went into the Hall of Fame, a couple of decades overdue. And Lanny was an interesting fellow. I always found him to be a very strange guy, a very weird guy, especially the way he spoke. And if he ever did an interview or you just kind of heard him talk about anything, you got a very weird way of just kind of describing everything, and the way he spoke and his inflection and his pitch and, and his cadence and all that is just very weird the way he describes everything. And he seemed like a very intelligent guy. He always had a lot to say, extremely opinionated, and was an interesting personality in wrestling. Now, he worked all over the place prior to his WWF days, which is where I first saw him. But prior to then, he worked in the NWA. He worked for Big Time Wrestling. He worked for his dad's ICW. He worked for Mid-South. He worked for Continental Wrestling Association alongside his brother in a lot of those territories as well. And then, of course, when Randy got the call to go up to WWE, Lanny wasn't far behind him. Now, my first memories of Lanny Poffo were of Leaping Lanny Poffo when I was a kid. Leaping Lanny Poffo was kind of like a mid-level jobber, like a Brady Boone level jobber, where he would come out to the ring in some flashy babyface costume and his curly hair, and he would read the poetry, his poems that he would write. I believe he wrote all of his poems, and they were written on a Frisbee, and then when he was done, he would throw the Frisbee into the crowd. Now, generally, Lanny lost all of these matches. He was just an enhancement talent. That was all he was pretty much used for at the time, but he was still pretty popular, even though he never really won a lot. He might be a notch or two above Iron Mike Sharp. I think he might have even had a doll. He might have even had an action figure in the 80s. He might have. I can't remember. But other than that, he was never really more than an enhancement talent. What I remember Leaping Lanny for the most is right before WrestleMania 3. In the city that I was born in Pontiac, Michigan, they held, I can't remember if it was on Saturday Night's Main Event or what it was, but they held a Battle Royal just a couple of weeks ahead of WrestleMania 3, and it was the first time you actually saw Andre the Giant wearing the black thing with the strap. Hulk Hogan was also in that Battle Royal, so before Hogan and Andre had that big face-off at WrestleMania 3, they actually mixed it up in a Battle Royal. A lot of people don't know that. Andre eliminated Hulk Hogan from that Battle Royal. I think Hercules would go on to win it. But in that Battle Royal, Lanny Poffo got busted open. Andre got his hands on him and just fucked him up. I think it was hard way. He just blood all over his face and got him all busted open and just tossed Lanny right over the top rope. And I remember being scarred by that because as a kid, you really bought into what they were selling you with Andre the Giant. Even though as a kid, I myself had sat there on my own living room floor and watched Andre the Giant lose a match before, I was still convinced that he was undefeated for 15 years. They made me believe that. So to watch this guy that WWE has made me believe is invincible, even though I remember him wrestling with long hair and losing a couple of times via DQ and stuff and getting bloodied up. I remember when they cut his hair. Andre did not seem invincible to me as a kid, but they made him invincible by the time they got to WrestleMania 3. So to see him throw Lanny over the top rope with a bloody face was just something that 10-year-old Greg hadn't seen a lot of at that time. So that was always something that stuck with me. A memory of Lanny Poffo, even though it was a memory of him getting his ass kicked, is something that I've always remembered. Now, he would be repackaged a year or two later, a couple of years later, as the Genius. He would wear a cap and gown, the whole deal. And it's really ironic that Macho Man Randy Savage used the pomp and circumstance for his theme music when really it should have been the Genius using that. Right? Isn't that always... I've always found that to be incredibly ironic. Genius didn't even have any fucking music. If he had music, it should have been his brother's music, which I always laugh at, and it's just some delicious dripping irony that wrestling is filled with. But the Genius was a genius move, because now you have found a good use for Lanny Poffo. He can still come out and read his poems, but now he can read them as a heel. And he can put down the baby faces, and he's so smug, and he's got that voice, and the way he prances around the ring and everything, it was perfect. He was a great wrestler / manager, and he fit that role well. He managed Mr. Perfect for a short time there before Perfect wound up with Bobby the Brain Heenan, which was a much better fit for him. But Genius also managed the Beverly Brothers, I believe, and maybe somebody else, I can't remember, and he would occasionally get in the ring. Now, probably his biggest moments as the Genius was probably when he was getting his hair cut by Brutus Beefcake or something, or he was a big part. He played a role in the Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior match at WrestleMania 6. There was even a match, I believe, on Saturday night's main event between the Genius and Hulk Hogan where the Genius won. I think it was right before, it was when Hogan was feuding with Perfect. It might even be the same show. I'm not totally sure. There's the Saturday night's main event where Perfect is breaking and destroying that beautiful Winged Eagle belt back there. That's my Cody point, by the way. Smashing it up with a hammer, remember? That might be the same episode where Genius scored like a count-out victory over Hogan with help, I believe, from Mr. Perfect, and he actually beat Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan lost a couple times on Saturday night's main event. Bundy beat him as well via count-out a couple of years before that. So Lanny got a victory over Hogan on Saturday night's main event. Hogan, I think, would have a rematch with him and, of course, kick his ass. But in the match that helped set up Warrior and Hogan at Mania, of course, they had the showdown in the Rumble. But then on that main event, they teamed him up against Perfect and Genius. And that's where Hogan and Warrior had the miscommunication that would finally implode and lead to them facing at WrestleMania 6. So the Genius had a hand in that as well. I'm trying to think who else he managed, but he kind of disappeared in around 1993 in WWE. He did come back in 94 to wrestle a couple of matches, but he was gone before he even really re-debuted on TV. And then, of course, he had that famous WCW contract where they kept him under contract for a couple of years as a favor to Randy Savage, and he never worked for them. I think he showed up and did one TV, and they had plans for him to dye his hair and have this whole gimmick, and something never panned out, and he was basically just paid for a couple of years, probably on Slim Jim's dime. I can't remember what Eric Bischoff claims the deal with that was, but I think part of the deal of bringing Randy in was to hire his brother, but I know Slim Jim picked up a lot of Randy's contract as well, so WCW might not have felt any of that cost, but it's always been, something that's been joked about in wrestling that Lanny, basically got a 2-year contract for doing nothing, or however long it was that he was under contract to WCW and never worked for them. It would have probably been interesting had they brought him in and debuted him on TV. It wouldn't have been odd because they were bringing everybody from WWE from the 80s out on TV. Honky Tonk Man and Boss Man and Earthquake and anybody they could get. Paul Orndorff, we're all making the jump to WCW who were in WWE before. So I'm surprised they didn't have the Genius come out as the Graduate or just change his name. He can still wear a cap and gown, just call him the Graduate. He can use the music and everything, but we never saw Lanny Poffo in WCW ever. He would work some independent stuff. He would stay active in the independent circuit all the way until his later years. He even had that weird... Have you seen that shoot thing that he did with Hannibal all those years ago? I mean, it was obviously a work, but it was a work shoot where he barged into the locker room after some show, probably in Canada, barged into the locker room and starts motherfucking Hannibal and slapping him in the face and everything, and they kind of get into it, and Hannibal takes him down, actually. Really weird, but not sure what that angle was all about, but he did that. And, of course, Lanny had a lot of things to say about Randy Savage and his Hall of Fame induction, and Lanny was big in the Randy documentaries, I believe, the A&E one. I think even the one WWE did on Randy, where he spoke a lot about Randy and his life and things like that. So I thought, in Randy's death, Lanny Poffo, as weird as he was, I always thought did a good job of honoring his brother and making sure, the fans knew what an important and a big deal he was. That was important to Lanny Poffo, to make sure that the fans knew and appreciated Randy Savage. He didn't have to worry about that with me. Randy was my second favorite wrestler of all time behind Bret the Hitman Hart. So it was a sad death, he learning of Lanny Poffo's passing. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, by the way, was the one that delivered the news. Our buddy Devlin, who is currently on the Jericho Cruise right now, just had dinner with Hacksaw a couple of days ago. I think the night before Hacksaw announced the news. So I'm curious if Hacksaw knew when he was hanging out with him if he had passed away, and why Hacksaw was the one chosen to deliver this news. But very unfortunate. Condolences to the remaining members of the Poffo family, everybody who knew Lanny, and of course, with his ties to Randy Savage, and all of my memories of Lanny as a heel and a babyface in WWE. This was definitely a death I wanted to speak about, because I have a lot of memories of Lanny, good and bad, and rest in peace to Lanny Poffo. Let's move on to some quick news about The Rock. Now, The Rock obviously is not going to be at WrestleMania 39 now. If he shows up now, I almost don't want him to, because if he was going to come in, he would have been here at the Rumble. And to bring him in now would just be, there's no room for The Rock. Rock, we actually don't need you. Sorry. You had your chance. You had your window at the Rumble. You chose not to dive through the window like Marty Jannetty. And so now you're shut out. Now, The Rock, apparently, according to Dave Meltzer, has left the door open for WrestleMania 40. Of course he has. Of course he has. I don't even care about that at this point. I'm done thinking about The Rock. I really wanted to see The Rock have another match. I think the best opportunity for The Rock to have another match would be against his own family, Roman Reigns, when Roman is at the top of his game in Los Angeles, California. This is the setting. This is where it needs to be done, right here. But he's not. Now, the only good thing about WrestleMania 40 is that it's a nice number. WrestleMania 40, is a big deal. So Rock having his final match at the 40th WrestleMania, or a return match or something, to finally close out his career would be fitting, I think. I also think Vince McMahon going into the WWE Hall of Fame at WrestleMania 40 is also pretty likely and might also be kind of fitting. By the way, have we had any Hall of Fame inductees yet for this year announced? Are they doing a Hall of Fame? What's going on at WrestleMania? I'm going to be at WrestleMania. I know nothing about the Hall of Fame. Am I going to the Hall of Fame? Let me know if there's any Hall of Fame news out there, because I don't have any to talk about. But anyway, Rock, I guess, is leaving the door open for WrestleMania 40. Now, next year, things could be much different with Roman Reigns. He's not going to be monopolizing 2 championship belts. And a match next year with The Rock might actually be better in terms of where it fits storyline-wise. But as each year goes by, what is The Rock really going to be able to do physically in the ring? I think he can do fine. I mean, Austin had a great match with Kevin Owens. You put Rock in there with the right guy, I think he can shine, even at his age. But, man, it makes you nervous. So The Rock could potentially come back at WrestleMania 40 next year to do one final match, or to maybe finally get that match done with Roman Reigns. That's possible, and it will be really curious 1 year from now as we head into WrestleMania 40, who the champion is going to be. Who's your picks going into next year's WrestleMania, heading into WrestleMania 40 in Philly? Who's going to be the champion as we sit February 4th, 2024? Could be anybody. Could be Cody, could be Roman again, could be Brock, could be Sami. Who knows who it could be? I don't think it'll be Cody. Even if Cody wins this year, can you see him holding the championship for a whole year? I will hope that Cody holds the belt for a whole year, if he brings that back. The winged eagle right there. Did you see that video of Cody going around the back of the arena? pointing to everything. I've been doing that. I've been doing it at work. Nobody understands what I'm doing. And I like that they don't understand. I just like pointing to shit now. But if Cody brought back the Winged Eagle, he can be champion until I die. I don't care. I will be so grateful for that championship belt coming back. But like, who do you think will be champ right now? So The Rock leaving the door open to WrestleMania 40. If I'm Triple H, I'm approaching The Rock a little bit differently. You know, I'm going to like The Rock, would love to have him, but I'm not going to pussyfoot around. I'm not going to drag my feet. I need to know. And I feel like Triple H kind of made that decision too. When Rock was like, okay, I'm not going to be in shape, Triple H is like, okay, cool. We're going in this direction then. Enough messing around. We need to know what we're doing. So hopefully this year, if Rock is really serious about this, as we get closer to the end of 2023, Triple H texts him like, dude, I need to know. It's November. Are you going to do it or not? Because if you're not, I need to plan my shit. And if you are, I need to plan your shit. So let me the fuck know. So we'll see what The Rock does. Maybe he will be at WrestleMania 40. Maybe he won't. At this point, I kind of don't care. Austin also does not look like he's going to be having a match at this year's WrestleMania either. There's a lot of rumors that he would be coming in to work another match. Even, according to Meltzer, was approached by WWE about doing the Roman match. So it almost felt like Cody Rhodes was like their third choice. They were trying to get Rock, and then Austin was even approached for this match before finally making the decision to have Cody win the Rumble. And apparently, according to Meltzer again, and take it with a grain of salt, WWE isn't married to the idea of Cody Rhodes being WWE champion. Yeah, clearly, if he was your third choice, then maybe you're not married to the idea of him being champion. And it all depends on how his run goes between now and Mania, how the fans react to him, and how the build with Roman Reigns goes. But first is that big match at Elimination Chamber, which we'll be talking about here in just a little bit. Speaking of WWE, they held their big investor call a couple of days ago. Was it yesterday or the day before? I think it might have been on Thursday. And big shocker, now this was the investor call that they do every so often, but this one was used to announce their 2022 financials. And big shocker, they made more money than they ever had. Shockaroo. Nick Khan was asked a few questions. One of those questions on this investor call was that if he believed Vince would step down if it led to a better deal on a sale. And he said yes, without question. He said Vince McMahon has said, and he's informed everybody, that if it maximizes shareholder value, then he will absolutely step away from WWE if it gives them a better deal. That's what Nick Khan is saying. It's all about shareholder value. I'm going to be happy when WWE sells, so I don't have to hear the words shareholder value anymore. I don't ever want to hear those two words next to each other again, because it just brings back gross memories, I would think, later in life. But Nick Khan has always been blowing smoke. Always. So he was on the investor call saying that. He said, yes, Vince has told us that he will step down, but, you know, Nick Khan has said some shit before that's been untrue. And then he was a guest, or he had an interview on CNBC yesterday, and he was asked the same thing about Vince McMahon, in which he said that Vince is 100% open to a transaction where he's not included moving forward. So if there is a deal that will get them the most amount of money for all of the shareholders, keep in mind Vince McMahon being the biggest shareholder, so Vince stands to make a shit ton of money, just like the shareholders do. And Nick Khan is claiming, 100% he's claiming, that if they can get a deal, but in order for that deal that'll maximize shareholder value, in order for that deal to go through, Vince must completely step away and completely relinquish all control of WWE. Nick Khan claims Vince McMahon will 100% do that. Now, he was also asked about potential suitors. Of course, there's a lot of talk still about who's going to buy WWE. Sounds like Comcast, who at one point was the front runner to buy the company, at least that's what we heard from various people. And that's kind of who I was most comfortable with in terms of WWE finding a home. I'm not comfortable with a wrestling company being owned by a media company at all, because I feel like you have to have, you know, some stability there at the center, and somebody who actually cares and knows about wrestling, and not have it be owned by an entity that might come in and just try to change everything after all these years. So even though I'm not comfortable with any of that, I thought Comcast would be the best place because WWE has 2 current existing relationships with Comcast. One of those being the USA Network, which WWE has been on ever since I was a little tiny Good Mic Work, except for that 2-year span or whatever it was where they were on TNN and Spike or whatever. That little stint, maybe it was 5 years, whatever it was. They've been on USA my whole life. So that's comfortable. I don't really want to see that change. And plus, they're already on Peacock. I know Peacock's a pain in the ass, but would you rather change platforms than just hope that Peacock gets better? I don't know. So I'm not really trying to change platforms either. Comcast would be the easiest for me as a wrestling fan to transition into. But now it sounds like they're not the front runner anymore and likely completely out of the running of buying WWE altogether. Now, Nick Khan said that they are all still a possibility and they have had a ton of interest in the marketplace and everybody is still a player. And he also says that he thinks the sale could be done within 3 months or in about 3 months, which would line it up with that earlier timeline that we heard a couple of months back about targeting something for this summer. So that sounds like they're still on pace for that. Looks like we will not get a sale until after WrestleMania. I think that's probably best anyway, is to try to at least get through this final WrestleMania and not have the news of a sale be dropped right in the middle of your WrestleMania build, when that should be dominating your headlines, when that should be giving the fans the most enthusiasm and getting us the most excited for WrestleMania, a great card. If you throw that in there, it could be a big distraction. And it won't be a fun distraction either, because this happened once before, back in 2001, on the Go Home Raw to the biggest WrestleMania of all time. We hear that the Monday Night Wars have come to an explosive end with Vince McMahon purchasing WCW and the 2 companies merging and the simulcast and Shane on Nitro. It ain't going to be like that this time unless Tony Khan buys the company and Tony Khan shows up on Raw, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I would really prefer if this company didn't get sold until after WrestleMania, so at least we as fans can enjoy WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, I actually don't want the distraction. After WrestleMania, there's usually a lull period anyway. Perfect time for a sale. Perfect not to overload the YouTube content here. We're already going to be talking about WrestleMania and dissecting every match, every possibility, and every scenario with the championships and the 2 nights. Every podcast between now and WrestleMania, we're going to be doing that. To have to talk about this shit on top of it's too much. So let's wait until after WrestleMania, sell WWE. That way, when we have nothing to talk about in April or May, we can talk about the sale and what the future of the company is going to be. So WWE, if you're listening, it would help us here on YouTube if you could just hold off on that sale till after WrestleMania, just to give the YouTubers a breather. If you could do that, we'd appreciate it. I own a share of WWE. 1 share, I think. I might. I don't know. Anyway, so later on, CNBC's own website, now Tony Khan did that interview with CNBC. On their own website, they posted an article that had kind of a contradiction to what Nick Khan was saying. And one of the quotes in that article was basically claiming that Vince's involvement so far has been a sticking point in the negotiations. And this is according to an unnamed source who doesn't want to be named. So I tend to believe that a hell of a lot more than anything that came out of Nick Khan's mouth. It does sound like when you factor in how Vince McMahon muscled his way back into the company, and he seemed hell-bent on getting back in there and being in control no matter what, even if it meant pushing out other board members, bringing back former employees, whatever he had to do to literally force his way back in. That does not sound like a guy who would be 100% willing just to step away if it gives them the best deal. Now, Vince McMahon has said time and time again in every statement that he's released about this nonsense is that shareholder value, our favorite words, is the number 1 priority for him. So if that is true, then Nick Khan should be correct. Vince should be willing to step away. But maybe Vince is looking for the absolute right buyer. Maybe Vince is trying to get the Saudi public investment firm to purchase WWE. They already own that Live Golf shit, and I think they would probably be the buyers most likely willing to keep Vince. Vince's relationship with them, I don't think they're going to really give a shit about public opinion of Vince or anything like that. If Vince wants to stay on board and he can negotiate something with them to allow him to remain in control somehow of the company, then, he might go with them. So don't even discount that Saudi stuff yet. That might actually still be a reality, along with Disney, Amazon, and everybody else. So one thing that Nick Khan's interview and the CNBC article told me is that we are not any closer to really figuring out who the most likely suitor is. Right now, I think everyone is on the table. Nick Khan didn't offer any hints to that. He even said with Comcast being rumored to be out of the running that they're not. They're very much in it. Everybody is still very much in it, and they haven't given us really much of an indication as to where WWE is going to land. But wherever they land, I just hope that it does not ruin WWE for the fans, because I am very nervous about that. I lived through WCW, you know, having when Ted Turner let go of it and it started, you know, being controlled by other folks. We saw what happened, and I don't want that to happen to WWE. I think their sale is going to be much more, I guess just much more organized than that. And they're going to, hopefully, they've been making sure that, yes, while shareholder value and maximizing that is very important, you got to make sure that the company lives on. And that's what I'm hoping for more than anything. I don't really give a shit about shareholder value, to be honest with you. I just want somebody competent who cares about wrestling to own the WWE. Hopefully that will be the case. We will see. I will be hitting all these super chats that are coming in here in just a minute. I appreciate that. Speaking of WWE, I want to read you this Brian Alvarez tweet. This came out just about 2 hours ago. NXT is going to allow talent to work selected indies going forward, which is a pretty big deal. End quote. That is a pretty big deal. Don't know the context of that or where that decision came from. Triple H allowing NXT talent to work select indies, or WWE allowing them to do that, is pretty surprising. WWE has allowed some indie appearances to happen. Triple H has been very cool. He let Nakamura go work with Muta and all that stuff. And Triple H is definitely a guy that's probably more likely to, send out his talents more than Vince ever would have been. It says, Brian's tweet says select indies, so maybe it has to be approved and it's got to follow a certain set of guidelines, and you have to win and you can't bleed, and who knows what sort of rules and restrictions are put on the talent. But the fact that they're even able to do this at all is a pretty big deal, because we have seen Tony Khan doing the same thing in AEW, letting their stars take bookings and shit like that to get more exposure and more experience and things like that. And Triple H letting his talent do that as well, I think that that's good. You don't want a homegrown, like, let's say somebody who has no wrestling experience at all, maybe like Sol Ruka, who I don't think had a whole lot of independent experience, even though that girl right there is the real deal. Oh my God. But, someone like her who comes in and is hired as a gymnast or whatever, okay, we're going to train you to wrestle, and all you know is the WWE system, WWE style of production. You should want these people to get out there a little bit and just see what an independent environment is like, dealing with a different type of fan base. Maybe even wrestling in a little sketchier type of environment, maybe a little bit less security, scare you a little bit. All this stuff is dues paying. It's experience points and things like that. I think would be good to have wrestlers see other parts of wrestling instead of just what WWE does. And for this to be allowed gives me hope that WWE no longer has this idea that they should be professional wrestling, because for a while it looked like WWE was going to try to branch out and buy everybody, buy every single professional wrestling promotion, no matter what size it is, buy everybody so everything can be under one umbrella. And I just thought that was a terrible idea. And I'm glad that we're not really any closer to that happening. If anything, we're a little further away from it now that we have AEW. But that's interesting. We'll see, what that leads to, and if it leads to any interesting appearances or possibly even interesting matches. And if you can get an NXT star on the same indie show as an AEW star and you match them up together, that could be a lot of fun. So we will see there. Let me cruise over here before we get into our next order of business in the wrestling news. And knock out a couple of these super chats, because I think some of them were pertaining to the WWE sale. Before we get too far off that subject, Mark Galan, appreciate that $5 from you. Could you see the crowd booing The Rock in favor of Cody Rhodes in the Royal Rumble? Maybe. It just depended on how you booked the Royal Rumble. I could see the crowd booing The Rock in favor of Cody if The Rock came in at number 30, if The Rock did what Cody did. Like, what if Cody came in at number 1? And I pitched this whole idea, actually, of getting The Rock over as a heel. have Cody come in at number 1, pull a Gunther, make it all the way to the end. Rock comes in at number 30 after Gunther is laying unconscious after Cody is laying unconscious in the ring, and just picks him up by his hair and throws him over the top rope without even breaking the sweat, wins the Royal Rumble, not even sweating, laughs, cuts a Hollywood Rock promo on the fans, says, fuck off, I'm going to go to WrestleMania and take the title from my cousin or whatever. I thought it would have been great. But I don't know if they would boo The Rock in favor of Cody. I don't know if Cody is that over. But I do think the portion of the crowd that would feel like current wrestlers are being robbed of their spot due to The Rock's appearance or presence, those fans could boo. But I don't know if that's a large enough sample size of the audience to make the boos overwhelming, I don't know. So I don't think that he would be booed in favor of Cody unless you booked it in a way, like I laid out, for the crowd to choose Cody. But if they just came in at numbers 9 and 10 back to back, then I think the crowd would probably be more into The Rock than they were Cody. Steeler Lee, appreciate that. $5. I honestly wouldn't want TK to buy WWE. No more wrestling monopolies. We talked about that a lot a couple of podcasts ago when Tony Khan's name was actually mentioned. And believe it or not, I agree with you 100%. The last thing we need is a wrestling monopoly, because we just left a wrestling monopoly for the last 20-something years, and wrestling really, really suffered. So the last thing we want to do is go back to that. However, it's not all cons. No pun intended. C-O-N-S. There's some pros to Tony Khan buying the WWE. One of those pros would be what I was just talking about a minute ago, is the fear, the uncertainty of WWE being sold to a media company that maybe doesn't have any personal love or attachment to WWE. There's a lot of moving parts in big corporations like that. They're always merging. People are leaving at the top and resigning and being replaced. And these type of people can all affect how the wrestling company portion of your media company is ran or is managed. And I think the one pro to having somebody like Tony Khan buy it is that he's sitting on billions of dollars. Literally, he's just sitting on a mountain of cash. Dude wipes his ass with 20s. And he loves wrestling. He's a fucking crazy nutcase wrestling fan. He's a out of his mind, enthusiastic, jumping around spider monkey, loves wrestling. The whole reason he created AEW is because he was a WWE fan growing up, and all the wrestlers that he fell in love with and the stars that he idolized. This guy's a lot younger than me. He's a fucking mark, man. We're all marks. That's what you want. I love Tony Khan. You're a mark. Guess what? You want a mark to own a wrestling company. You want a mark with billions and billions of dollars to run a wrestling company. That's the exact person you want. You don't want some douchebag executive that laughs at wrestling to be in charge of it. Don't be stupid. So I think, yes, a wrestling monopoly would be terrible. We don't want that again. But I think you can have worse suitors and buyers than Tony Khan. Saudi Arabia Group comes to mind. At least with Tony Khan, you have a guy that you know is not going to let go of wrestling. Maybe one day when he gets older, he will sell it. But in terms of Tony Khan, what is he, in his 30s or something? This is a guy that's very, very much into preserving, wrestling, creating his own company. He's a big wrestling fan, and he appreciates and respects the history of the business. You can have a lot worse people owning wrestling companies. So I think a lot of fans, when they start freaking out at the concept of Tony Khan buying WWE, that's just their bias rearing its head. They hate Tony Khan for whatever reason. Social media is a big driver of that. These people just come up with these ideas to hate people, and they have nothing to back it up whatsoever. They just repeat what Jim Cornette says, and that's it. So when you start seeing those people freak out, I'm like, wouldn't you prefer him? Even though it's not ideal. Like I said, wrestling monopolies suck. You could do worse than Tony Khan. He wouldn't be my first choice at all to buy WWE, but if it came down to like him and the Saudis, I'll be taking TK 8 days a week over those fuckers, man. Zach Goller, appreciate the $5. Very open to the idea of Comcast purchasing WWE. Also allows them to put a physical Hall of Fame at Universal, for example. Yes, I think Disney also gives WWE that opportunity. Disney could make a whole theme park, WWE-related, restaurants and all this shit, and they could definitely help build a physical Hall of Fame, maybe down there in Orlando, or maybe here in LA, but probably Orlando would be the better place for something like that. So they could get that done with Comcast or Universal or Amazon, whoever buys them. Hopefully one day we will see a physical WWE Hall of Fame. That would be superb. Ryan Y will knock out this final one before jumping back into the news. Appreciate that $10, dude. Thank you so much. Hey, Greg, took a year off WWE, but I'm back now. So, of course, back to your channel, too. Looking forward to the Sami storyline. Right on, Ryan Y. Glad you're here. You took a year off. I am happy you're back, man. Tony is 43. Okay, he's younger than me. 40, 43, doesn't matter. Point is, he's not that old. And if you have a guy like that who just has many years ahead of him still, and he's got billions and billions of dollars, and he wants to, run a wrestling company, I say let him. I don't give a shit. It would be better than the Saudis, you know what I'm saying? This Punk MJF story is going to be ridiculous. Yeah, a lot of Punk MJF chatter as well. 2KJ Stewart, and a lot of people think that CM Punk will in fact be back in the company in AEW sometime this year. I kind of think that he might as well. Speaking of people getting in fights, I thought this was interesting. There's some notes coming out of the Jericho Cruise. Now, our buddy Devlin is on the cruise right now, and he's given me some information. He DM'd me a couple of tidbits here. The first one was that next year's Jericho Cruise, the 5th one, is going to be going to Mexico. It's going to be going to Cozumel, Mexico. But he didn't say that at first. He just told me Mexico. I'm like, well, if they leave from Miami, they just go down to the Bahamas and back. That's a quick 4-day cruise. Going to Mexico is 4 times farther. So I was thinking that, holy shit, maybe the cruise is leaving from here. Maybe it's leaving from Southern California and going down the Pacific side of Mexico. And if that's the case, Good Mike Work's going to be on that boat. But apparently, no, it's actually still leaving from Miami. They're going to go to Cozumel, Mexico, which if you look at the map, it's about 3 or 4 times further away than the Bahamas. So I don't know if they're just going to drive the boat real fast. I mean, you're not going to have a whole lot of time to stop. I guess maybe overnight in the port there and then come back. But Devlin says it's going to be a 5-day cruise, which I believe is 1 day longer than normal, which I'm surprised they can cover that amount of ground. But I don't know anything about boats and how fast they can go and knots and shit like that. But 5-day cruise next year, going to Mexico instead of the Bahamas. That's kind of cool. Not sure if I'll be making the trip now. If it was leaving from Southern California, I definitely would, because there would be no plane ticket to buy, and I would not have to spend 2 days traveling to the other side of the country to get on this boat. But that is kind of interesting information on next year's cruise. I hope everybody's having a blast on that cruise right now. I went 3 years ago and had the time of my life, posted a big video review of the show and everything. It was fun. Devlin also tells me that Dan Lambert gave Chris Jericho the Intercontinental title belt that Jericho beat China for. So I guess maybe the physical, actual IC belt Lambert owns. And he gifted it to Chris Jericho. And Devlin says he will get pics of his belt collection tomorrow. So I guess maybe Dan Lambert has brought all of his championship belts to the cruise. That's kind of fucking cool. And yeah, hopefully Devlin's having a good time, and those were some of the news tidbits he sent me. But also, there was something else. Fightful Select posted a report today about a scuffle that took place at Double or Nothing. Scuffle or Nothing. Double or Nothing last year I was at in Vegas. I don't even remember what Starks and Swerve did, but apparently Swerve Strickland and Ricky Starks got into a little backstage fight last year at Double or Nothing. This is courtesy of Fightful Select. News on a backstage scuffle last year. Not all backstage AEW fisticuffs have resulted in long-term issues. A couple of top performers in AEW have admitted that they got into a skirmish in 2022. Swerve Strickland and Ricky Starks were involved in a tag team championship match at Double or Nothing, which led to a scuffle. Oh, that's right, tag title match. Per the two men. Fightful Select had reported last year that there had been some issues between the two after the match due to a miscommunication. However, this was the first we'd heard of it elevating to scuffle status. We're told that the issues stemmed from a miscommunication late in the match where there was an unplanned spot that saw Swerve attack Ricky after an attempted pin on Jungle Boy. Starks was originally supposed to go for his finish on someone, but Swerve found himself doing nothing and thought it would be better improv to get hit and dumped out of the ring. Otherwise, he'd be standing there watching it. We had heard that they had a follow-up segment on Dynamite after that nixed, but made peace after that and are fine to this day. They even worked together a couple of months later on AEW Fyter Fest. So I think they might both be on the boat, and this was recorded for Swerve's podcast. So I guess Ricky and Swerve are both there, and they got into a little scuffle last year. They made peace pretty quickly and are cool to this day, and that's what you like to see. And that is more common than most people realize, I think, in wrestling, because we always hear what makes the news is the fights, and what makes the news is the heat and the disagreements and, the political nonsense that goes on behind the scenes, with Brawl Out and Montreal Screwjob and Sammy Guevara and Andrade and Eddie and Kurt Angle and Batista and Booker T and a lot of these fights that happen. But more often than not, you get a lot of these fights that happen, these disagreements, these shoving matches, these pinch fights or whatever, that are usually smoothed over right away. There's only a few instances of the super gnarly, the Jacques Rougeau and Dynamite Kid, the Dan Spivey and Adrian Adonis. There's only a few of those that really are over the top, but for the most part, whenever these scuffles happen, usually not only are things smoothed over, but the talent winds up working with each other because guess what? They're professionals and they got a job to do, and you got a lot of money that needs to be made, and you're contractually obligated to go out there and do your job and make your money and be a professional. You cannot let shit like that get in the way of your livelihood, and I love it when wrestlers understand that and they can get past their issues, because when you are in this line of work and you're in the ring pretending to fight people, it's easy to tag someone. It would seem like really easy to have tempers flare. I mean, I know at work, in my restaurant, for example, if we're really busy, staff's running around everywhere and they're bumping into each other. Watch where you're going or whatever. Of course, you're supposed to say behind or corner or whatever you're supposed to say in restaurants. But a lot of times, people run into each other and, they don't fight or anything, but they're definitely frustrated with each other. And I'm like, that's just the nature of the business, man. Slow down, pace yourself, think about what you're doing, prioritize shit in your mind. Don't be emotional and just chill the F out, for God's sakes. And I really appreciate stories like that. So cool that Swerve and Ricky had that issue, and they have worked out that issue. Let's see, a lot of talk about Ricky this week as well, because Ricky Starks accompanied Cody Rhodes to last week's Royal Rumble. Ricky was there, I guess, as Cody's guest, and hung out backstage, and a lot of people thought that was such a huge deal, but guess what? It wasn't. People are allowed to have friends, and Triple H let Bayley go to Japan to support Sasha. I don't think it's really any big deal. I don't think Ricky Starks was there to kind of get feelers out for a job or anything like that. He's not going to risk contract tampering shit when he's somebody like Ricky Starks, who already has not only incredible potential and incredible value, but incredible friends in the business. If Ricky Starks wants to go to WWE, he does not need to do any work on that at the Royal Rumble. When his contract is up, all he has to do is text Cody, contract is up, I'm ready. Cody pulls the strings and makes it happen, brings Ricky in, and Ricky has got a job. So I found it interesting that a lot of fans were freaking out. Oh man, Tony Khan, he's going to lose Ricky Starks to WWE. Ricky Starks, regardless if he was with Cody at the Rumble or not, that Rumble appearance isn't going to be any deciding factor in where he goes. If he wants to go to WWE, he can go to WWE with or without being Cody's guest at the Royal Rumble. So I didn't think it meant anything, and I really like it that we see things like that at least AEW and WWE, there is, the competitive rivalry there. But there are going to be circumstances where things really aren't a big deal, and guys are allowed to go backstage to the competitor to support a friend. Really not that big a deal. It used to happen back in the day too, even during the height of the Monday Night Wars. Maybe not on TVs and pay-per-views, but definitely house shows. If WWE was in a WCW town or something. I know there was one house show I swear Bret Hart went to about a year after the Screwjob, went backstage at a house show. I could be wrong about that. I think it was somewhere mid-98. And I think it was before Owen died, I think. And Bret went backstage at a house show and visited friends after he had already had that shit happen with WWE. There's a famous picture from, I think, sometime in 1996 with WCW and WWE guys all hanging out. I don't know if they were outside of a gym or where they were, but it was like the Giant is in the middle. You got Randy Savage out there. Hulk Hogan is out there. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the British Bulldog. I can't remember who else, but a collection of WWE and WCW guys. You like to see that stuff. So I've always enjoyed it whenever I would see pictures in magazines of interpromotional mingling, somewhere, or pictures of two guys together. I always liked to see that. I always thought it was cool. So when I saw Ricky Starks with Cody, I'm like, that's awesome. But of course, this is 2023. This is a completely different time. And instead of looking at that saying, oh, that's awesome, you got fans freaking out about what it meant. Oh, WWE. So the WWE fans think WWE haters think it's a big problem for one reason. AEW haters think it's a big problem for another, when it's not a big problem at all. But I did think it was very cool. Little Ricky Starks note there. Since we're on the subject of AEW, let's just briefly talk about Dynamite real quick. Now, we were here to watch this past Wednesday. What a show. Damn, what a show to watch live. Holy shit. We had Samoa Joe winning back the TNT title from Darby Allin in the damnedest match. I mean, every time these guys have wrestled each other, they're two of the most fun guys to watch work with each other. They're perfect for each other because Samoa Joe is so big and Darby just looks like a little child. And every time they face, they tend to top what they've done before. And I thought this match was coming on a little soon. Even on Wednesday, I was predicting that we were going to get a Sami victory. Sami Zayn would retain the title with help from Wardlow. I just figured that would be the direction they're going to go. You still need Wardlow and Joe to finish off their issue. Wardlow got his hair cut. You know he's got to come back and attack Samoa Joe at some point. So what perfect time to do it than in the TNT title match? And since Darby just won the title 4 weeks ago, he's had some spectacular main events on Dynamite. I'm not ready to see that end quite yet. So I thought that was the finish we were going to get, but it wasn't. We actually got the full match, and it was insane. Darby Allin coming to the ring during his entrance wearing a thumbtack hoodie, a black hoodie with a hood with thumbtacks all over it sticking out. When he was coming out, I just thought it was like a sparkly jacket, like a Jericho sparkly jacket. No, those were thumbtacks sticking outward. And seeing him come to the ring, that was my favorite part of the match. We were laughing when we were watching it live because Joe, under normal circumstances, wouldn't be afraid of Darby Allin, right? You know, even though Darby is a very formidable opponent, and even though Darby beat Samoa Joe for the title already, I still don't think Joe necessarily fears Darby, you know? He considers him a tough opponent, but, you know, one-on-one, strength-wise, fight-wise, fisticuffs-wise, Joe's going to get the better of that exchange every time. So when Darby comes to the ring wearing the hoodie, you can see Joe being like, oh fuck. He has no time to react to this because Darby gets in the ring and just charges him. And you can see Joe being like, fuck, you know, because you literally, there's nothing you can do. This crazy little man is coming at you 100 miles an hour. You got no shirt on, you know, and he's coming at you wearing a spiked shirt and going to charge you football tackle style. There's literally nothing you can do but eat that shot. You have to take the shoulder tackle with the thumbtacks. Joe, I think he grabs his towel or something and finally gets a hold of Darby and stops him and rips the hoodie off of him. But it took him a minute, and that was such a fun way, I think, to start the match. And then, of course, Joe just beats the hell out of Darby the whole time. Darby taking a hell of a lot of punishment, but so is Samoa Joe, who I think got caught in the face with a table and got busted open hard way right above his eye, got some stitches. And he was busted open pretty bad. You had the tables and you had the chairs and all that stuff. And then at the end, we're running out of time. We got about 2 minutes left, and Darby is trying to cut away with a razor blade or something, or a knife, cut away the ring mat to expose the wooden planks, the boards underneath. And he does. He finally gets it done. Samoa Joe is able to recover, grabs Darby, and winds up hitting a muscle buster on Darby from the top onto the exposed boards in the sickest bump. I mean, Darby Allin's a $140, $150, whatever he is, and there's not much meat between his skin and his bones. And so, you know, him taking a bump like that from that height on those boards, I can't see this guy, you know, wrestling a career as long as Jeff Hardy. I couldn't even see Jeff Hardy wrestling a career as long as Jeff Hardy. And I don't know how Darby is going to be able to handle this, but at least we're getting Darby right now in his prime while he's young and capable of doing these insane spots. Hopefully this will not come back to haunt him later in his life, because I know he's kind of an extreme sports nut and he likes to dive off of shit and be very extreme, and he's an adrenaline junkie. I just hope none of that comes at too much of a price of his physical health when he gets older, because, you know, look at the pro wrestlers, look at, you know, the problems Jeff Hardy's probably going to have in his life. Look at all those jackass guys, you know, who barely fucking walk now because of the concussions and the broken bones and the damage they've done to the body, the bumps they've taken. The jackass boys have taken bumps, hard bumps, you know. And I think of Darby in that same way, is that, you know, I don't want this guy to have 19 back surgeries by the time he's 35 years old. So great stuff, though. That match was just incredible. Loved every minute of it. And Dynamite was rolling. By the way, 901,000 was the rating for Dynamite, so they stayed right in their neighborhood. Like I said, in my mind, they're always going to be between 800,000 and 1.1 million. That's their area right there. I'm not too concerned with the ratings unless it goes below or above that. They dip below 800,000, I'm going to be like, oh shit. They go above 1.1, I'm going to be like, way to go. But if it's in there, I don't know why we have to have hours of arguing and bullshit discourse online every week when these ratings come out when they're the fucking same every week. So ratings don't mean too much to me as long as they are consistent. It's when they break out of that consistency pattern when I start to get concerned. Jade Cargill went to 50-0 with a victory over one of my favorite wrestlers, Red Velvet. I love her. Red Velvet actually had Jade down and pinned when the referee was down. I can't recall anybody having Jade in that position. This might have been the closest Jade has come so far to being defeated, but in the end, going into this match at 49-0, you know she's going to come out of it. 50-0, she beat Red Velvet. Pretty good match, and I don't know when Jade finally loses. Does she go to 100-0? Or do they take the belt off of her before then? And who's the one to do it? Who knows? Takeshita and Brian Cage was also very fun on Wednesday night. So was Bryan Danielson and Timothy Thatcher. Timothy Thatcher was brought in. Apparently, this was part of the talent exchange. When Noah got Sting and Darby Allin, part of that exchange was to send Timothy Thatcher over to AEW. So on Wednesday, I didn't know that. And I was saying, boy, I hope they give Timothy Thatcher the All Elite graphic. But I think he was just coming in as a talent exchange deal. Worked with Danielson, really fun match. And it was one that I was looking forward to all week. Of course, Danielson won because he's going on to face MJF in that Iron Man match at Revolution. So he's going to have to win all of his matches up until that point. And he beat Timothy Thatcher in a really fun one. Also, we saw Moxley and Hangman Page. Mox getting that little cheap victory over Hangman. Mox was bloodied up like crazy. These two guys were just beating the hell out of each other. Hangman seemed a little bit pissed that Moxley resorted to that pin when they were supposed to be fighting. So I feel like they're going to set up some sort of stip for Revolution. Lights out could be possible. Last man standing, something like that. But since since the concussion thing started this with Hangman Page and then they did the concussion kind of angle with Mox in LA, I feel like some sort of lights out knockout match is what they're probably going to do between these two guys at Revolution. So that was pretty good. And also they set up next week's tag team title match. The Acclaimed beat a couple of local guys or some independent wrestlers that some people knew. I'd never seen them before. And after the match, the Ass Boys come out. They start getting into it with the Acclaimed. Billy Gunn gets frustrated, yells at everybody, walks away until his sons bring him back in the ring. And I think Colton or something drops the line about him drowning his sorrows in a pill bottle. They talked about how Billy was never there before. Walk out just like you walked out on us when we were little and shit like that, really hitting below the belt. Billy comes back. Even his son kind of had that look on his face like he fucked up. And he's like, you look at me, boy, and I'm going to take you to the woodshed, whatever. Billy really gets on his boy's cases. And then he says, you want a tag team title shot? You got it. And up, there you go. And I was like, light bulb, that old trope. Whenever somebody makes a match, especially a championship match, on behalf of somebody else without their approval or agreement, and they kind of give them that look, what? You know something's up. So as soon as Billy just offers up or agrees to a championship match with the Ass Boys on behalf of the Acclaimed, and Caster and Bowens are kind of like, Billy's turning. I think Billy Gunn is going to help his boys win the tag team championships on Dynamite, and I hope that he does. I think that would be a great moment for Billy, tag team wrestler extraordinaire, multi-time champion with multiple partners, made his career as a tag team wrestler. And to be able to guide his own sons to those very same championships, I think would be, granted they're not WWE tag titles, but they are tag titles. I think would be a great moment for them. And since this is happening so close to Revolution, I would be fine with a 3-week Ass Boys championship run and the Acclaimed winning them back at Revolution. It's like, I'm not sure if the Ass Boys are really ready to be tag team champions, but the tie-in with Billy, I mean, the Ass Boys have gotten better, don't get me wrong. But the fact that it's Billy, I just think it would be great for that family, even if it's a short-lived run. So I kind of hope Billy Gunn turns on the Acclaimed, helps his boys win back the tag team championships, and then maybe what you do, maybe you book a handicap or something. Maybe you book, although Billy can still go, maybe you book Acclaimed versus the Ass family, 2 against 3 for the tag team titles, which would be weird. One team would be a trios. You might not want to do that when you have a trios division, so that might not work. But I could see the Ass family going after the trios titles. That would be fun. All three Ass Boys, the Ass Man and the two Ass Boys as trios champions. That could be cool too. So maybe Ass Boys win next week. Acclaimed wins them back at the pay-per-view. I think that's a very likely possibility. So we will see if Billy Gunn does in fact turn on his boys next week on Wednesday. We want to move in next to Raw and SmackDown. We got to talk a little bit about that. We were up here watching Raw together last Monday. We're not going to go through the whole show, the results or anything, but we got to talk about Cody and we got to talk about Rhea Ripley and Charlotte. Before we do that, let me cruise back over here to the chat and please request you guys to smash that thumbs up button. And also, if you are not a subscriber, that button is also down there too. And that finger, and you got a mouse or something, or maybe a tablet, just go like that. Subscribe. Just do that. Do that for me. I'd appreciate it. Red Raven Rucker is late. It's going to have to be up to the rest of the chat whether or not I block you or not. We don't tolerate tardiness in this chat, Red Raven Rucker. So the chat will decide your fate. Thank you very much, Mark, for $2 more. Ironically, I saw Swerve Stark's match in 2018. No kidding. That's awesome. J-Dog Nation, what's up? Thank you for the $3 and the waving little yellow man there. Appreciate that as well. All right, that catches us up there. Let's talk WWE. We got a lot of stuff going on in WWE. What a SmackDown last night. We knew we were going to get the Bloodline stuff, the Roman stuff, the Sami stuff, and now that match for Elimination Chamber is official. But first, I want to talk quickly, briefly, about Monday Night Raw. 2.1 million for Raw this week. Excellent number. 2.2 million, I believe, for last night's SmackDown. So Raw, SmackDown, and AEW all did solid numbers. Raw and WWE, it actually really is good how it always works out for them. I mean, they're going to be putting up some amazing ratings, I think, between now and WrestleMania. Not only do they have the ending of Monday Night Football they have had to compete with for the past 5 months, but they go also into WrestleMania season at the same time. So they get that football ratings boost and WrestleMania ratings boost at the same time. So I really think it's in WWE's best interest to keep these Raws and SmackDowns as interesting and as exciting as possible and book big matches and big segments to keep these ratings up, because last night, it was funny. I had a last-minute Friday night off, and I was thinking about SmackDown, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually really excited to see SmackDown tonight because we didn't get any Roman Bloodline Sami stuff on Raw. So none of that, all the fallout of that is going to be happening here. And it made me excited to watch a SmackDown and just to have that feeling of watching WWE deliver a compelling story that makes you want to tune in. That hasn't been regularly achieved since the Attitude Era. You know, I haven't had that feeling as a fan like, oh my God, I got to see SmackDown tonight, or I've got to see Raw tonight. I haven't said that shit in 20 years, man. Even post-Mania Raws have become a letdown in recent years. I mean, those really were the last remaining must-see TV shows from WWE. You don't want to miss a post-Mania Raw, but even those have been missable. The last couple of them have anyway. They're not like they used to be, that's for sure. They're not Joe Daddy's post-Mania Raws. So nothing feels like it's must-see. Even when WWE is doing great things, I could still miss it and just pick up the highlights on YouTube. No big deal. I wanted to see what was going to go on here with the Bloodline and Sami Zayn. So we're going to be getting into that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about Monday Night Raw. Raw was mostly centered around Cody Rhodes because, of course, Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble. He came out, he opened the show, talked about winning the Rumble, talked about facing Roman Reigns at WrestleMania and his desire to be WWE champion. And there was also a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk ever since Cody came back that if he wins the title, will he bring back the classic Winged Eagle title hanging on the wall over there? And I have maintained that if he does that, he will be my favorite wrestler. Cody did bring back the classic IC, albeit with the white strap. He still brought it back. And I would love for him to see, or love for him to go old school, or maybe make, you know, even if the Winged Eagle is a custom Cody belt or something and it's not here to stay, it's just going to be the belt that he wears. Because that's the thing. If Cody were to bring back the Winged Eagle, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be WWE's new championship belt. Like they're going back to the Winged Eagle. I just think it might be Cody's custom belt. No different than Austin's Broken Skull belt. Same thing. Same concept is what I feel like that would be. But because the reason that is because it doesn't have that big, disgusting logo bullshit smeared all over the front faceplate of the title. And I think that's something that WWE, from a branding perspective, always wants. And that's why I think if the Winged Eagle was brought back, it would probably be temporary. But I've always maintained bringing back, the big gold as well. But I also think that if you're not going to separate these championships and these two belts are going to remain one champion in the company, then you need one championship. So, maybe that could merge together and maybe Cody gets the brand new belt. Maybe Cody doesn't bring back the Winged Eagle, but maybe Cody is the first one to hold the new championship belt. They've done this several times, right? I think the Rock unveiled a belt once. Triple H got the title once the Undisputed title in 2002, once he won them both from Jericho. And then I think Brock, same thing. Well, no, maybe not. It took them a while. I guess they had that double championship in 2013 forever. That 2012 and 2013 era there. Brock came back, 2014. I don't know, whatever that was. It felt like they had two titles there for a long time before finally putting them together. But I think if you're going to have one championship, then you don't need two belts representing that. You just need one belt. So the fact that Roman is still walking around there with two makes me feel like these two belts, eventually will be separated again. But how do you do that or whatever? I don't know. And how do you factor in the Winged Eagle? But you got a long way to go before you get to that Winged Eagle coming back. First, Cody actually has to go to WrestleMania and beat Roman Reigns. And that's going to be a tall order, especially when you hear things like WWE not being married to the idea of Cody Rhodes being champion and even going to approach Rock and Austin ahead of Cody Rhodes. So maybe once WrestleMania gets here, they decide the best course of action is to actually have Roman Reigns retain these titles against Cody. Assuming Roman Reigns is even going to be facing Cody, it might be Sami Zayn, but I have a feeling it's going to be Cody. Now, Cody would be interrupted by the Judgment Day, of course, and then Cody ended up challenging him, any of them, to a fight, which would wind up being Balor in the main event. Edge would come out and get him some of Judgment Day as well, and there was a big brawl. And then later on in the Cody and Balor match, Edge would come through the crowd while Beth Phoenix would show up and spear Rhea Ripley in the aisleway. Finn Balor, I think, is going up for the coup de grace on Cody. Edge distracts him. Cody grabs Balor, boom, hits him with 3 crossroads for the win, and wins the match, and setting up what I believe will probably be some sort of Finn Balor and Edge stipulation match at WrestleMania. And also, I'm hoping we get Rhea Ripley against Beth Phoenix at the Elimination Chamber, with Rhea Ripley beating her. And speaking of Rhea Ripley, she came out on Raw to announce who she's challenging for the Women's Championship at WrestleMania. Now, I had said leading up to the Royal Rumble, Rhea Ripley, of course, was my pick to win. And I said, I feel like based on everything we've seen in 2022, the match you need to do at WrestleMania would be Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, because they're the two strongest women on your roster. Bianca has been unstoppable, held the title for nearly a year on the babyface side, and the whole year of 2022 was to get over Rhea as this badass heel. That's just the natural match you need to do between these two, superstar women and the next generation class under the Beckys and the Baileys and the Charlottes and women like that. So these are, the new, top stars of the company from that class. And they're very similar in terms of their size and their strength, and I think it would be such a good match to have. But that was all before Charlotte came back and surprised everybody with a return and won the SmackDown Championship. So when we were doing the predictions, I even laid out, I'm like, if Rhea Ripley were to win, that would really be setting her up for an opportunity to face Charlotte again, because she owes Charlotte one. And even last year, before Charlotte even came back, it was like maybe last summer, I said it in a tweet, or maybe it was on a podcast, because I was thinking about the two of them. And I said, man, looking at how badass Rhea is, this just new demeanor of hers, and this darker look, and this alliance with the Judgment Day, the fact that she's beating the shit out of dudes, showing no fear, she's dominant. It's going to be a different story when the Queen and Rhea Ripley cross paths once again, whenever that day comes. Little did I know it would be at the very next year's WrestleMania. I thought we were a year away from something like that happening. But then Charlotte shows up, they put the belt back on her, and she's a babyface, don't forget. I was like, oh man, they've got a good opportunity here. Charlotte could very well be the one that Rhea challenges, and that's what happened. Rhea comes out on Raw and talks about Charlotte, talks about their last match, at WrestleMania 36, the pandemic match, and all of that, when it was for the NXT title, and says that she's going to, right that wrong. And that's what I've been excited for, because I feel like WWE has an opportunity to really right this wrong. This reminds me a lot of Brock Lesnar and John Cena. Brock Lesnar comes back shows up in WWE, just like when Charlotte challenged Rhea Ripley for the NXT title. Rhea Ripley comes in with the title, works a WrestleMania match. You feel like she should be the one to win, right? And instead, Charlotte beats her, wins the NXT title, pisses off a lot of fans, just like when Brock came back, fresh off his UFC run. The very first match he wrestles is against Cena, the guy who always wins, and Cena beats him. Holy shit, man. So when they had that rematch at SummerSlam, I was the one that said, this is revenge time. This is going to remind people of who Brock Lesnar is and to get him this victory back. Little did we know it was going to be a squash. He completely murdered John Cena, which is what I said he was going to do in my predictions leading up to SummerSlam that year. But so many fans were jaded over John Cena. They were convinced, nope, good mic work, you're a moron. John Cena's going to go in there and beat Brock Lesnar like he always does. And I'm like, what about this situation makes you think that? Like, look at what's happening. I understand that you got this thing in your head about Cena and he always wins, but man, they are basically telling you what's going to happen here. John Cena is going to lose. The only reason John Cena is the champion to begin with is because Daniel Bryan got injured and had to drop the titles. Had that not happened, it would have been Bryan going into SummerSlam to beat Daniel Bryan. It would have been Brock and Bryan. So here with WrestleMania, yes, I know WWE is very annoying with their booking of Charlotte, but just like John Cena, Charlotte could easily afford not only a loss, but a squash loss. And I would love to see that. I would love to see Rhea Ripley face Charlotte and tell the story of it's been 3 years since their last WrestleMania match, and Rhea is a completely different person. Is Charlotte a different person? No. Charlotte is literally the exact same wrestler that she was 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Heel or face, Charlotte is the same. Her intensity has remained the same. Her ability has remained the same. Her strategy has remained the same. We've seen very little fluctuations in Charlotte's demeanor or intensity or strength or anything like that. That is not the same thing with Rhea Ripley. She is much more formidable now, and she looks like somebody who you do not want to trifle with. And if I am Triple H, I am looking at this as not as an insult to Charlotte whatsoever, but I am using Charlotte's star power, her star status, just like they used Brock's star power to smash over Goldberg at Survivor Series that year. Remember? What happened to Brock after that? Still went on to win 4 more championships. It can be done with the right person, and Charlotte is that right person. Charlotte literally, I believe, could go out there and lose in 3 seconds to Dana Brooke. Dana Brooke could hit her with one move, knock her completely out, and pin her and win the championship, and I still think Charlotte's career would be just as influential, just as important, just as Hall of Fame worthy, and she could still easily go on to win many other championships down the road. She's gained that much value. She has that much equity in her career and her resume and her legacy that no matter what happens to Charlotte at this point, nothing is ever going to be considered a burial with her. Nothing is ever going to be unfair. And that's why I think Rhea Ripley going into this match against Charlotte at WrestleMania, she needs to beat her and beat her badly. Charlotte can get a move in. It's fine. Maybe Charlotte can even get Rhea Ripley down and lock her in the figure 8. I think Rhea Ripley needs to power out of it and escape it or counter it or something. And I think any sort of glimmer of offense Charlotte has, Rhea has an answer for every time. You give these women 9 minutes, and it's Rhea dominant over Charlotte. Charlotte tries to fight back, gets Rhea on the ropes a couple of times, but Rhea ultimately is able to answer and put Charlotte down and do that pin that she does. You know that pin that Rhea Ripley does, that riptide, fold on the legs back, the Undertaker tongue, the whole deal, the whole 9 yards is what we need to see with Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair. If they do that, I think that would help. That would just, it would, I guess I'm trying to figure out the phrase here. It would accomplish a lot, basically. 2 birds with 1 stone, I guess is what I was trying to say. Because number one, it would really establish Rhea as a major, major, major player now. You get over like that, you beat that person on that stage in that way, you're a made woman. And at the same time, it might help relax some of the fans' opinions of Charlotte. Now, that really didn't happen with Cena, because even though Cena got his ass kicked, Cena had created so much hate with that special portion of the audience that it wasn't just going to cool off overnight. And, by the very next year going into WrestleMania, people were pissed that he was winning again. So I think because he beat Rusev, remember the tank and the whole deal at WrestleMania? So I think with Charlotte, it could at least maybe help ease some of the fans' dislike for her, knowing that Triple H is now in control, and some of these typical Charlotte booking philosophies that WWE has might be out the window. Because if you notice, when Charlotte came back and won the title from Ronda a couple of weeks back, fans were happy that Ronda was potentially gone because everybody hated Ronda, but you still saw a lot of people complaining and claiming and assuming, because critical thought is hard, assuming that this means that Vince McMahon is back in control. Charlotte came back and won the title. It must mean 100% that Vince is back, because why else would that happen? The attention spans of fucking gerbils, man. Maybe you just have to look a little further ahead. Maybe this has been Triple H's plan the whole time. Charlotte's coming back. I'm going to bring her back as a babyface, put the belt on her, and send her to WrestleMania to get beat by Rhea Ripley. That might have been his whole thought process the whole time. So the fans usually just see what's right in front of them, and they don't think big picture. So when Charlotte wins the title, it's the sky is falling, Vince McMahon is back, WWE's right back to their old ways. Maybe not. Maybe there was a method to this madness that's going to wind up and leading to us being very happy wrestling fans at WrestleMania. Same thing happened in 2014. I'm going to always make this comparison. Remember when Bryan had to relinquish the titles because he got hurt, and then it was the Money in the Bank where they were on the line, right? And everybody was like, Roman Reigns should win or Bray Wyatt should win. When John Cena won, everybody freaked out. Cena wins again. This is bullshit. I'm boycotting WWE. And I'm sitting here like, can you guys stop for a second and just think about what our WrestleMania or what our SummerSlam main event is now? We're getting Brock and Cena again, and it's going to be a lot different. They put those belts on John Cena for him to pass those to Brock Lesnar. That's what they're doing, but the fans couldn't see it because they were blinded by anger, and they were blinded by the sheer hate of one wrestler winning a match, and they couldn't think beyond that. So I think a lot of the same things happened with Charlotte. A lot of people have been pissed, oh, right back to Charlotte again. I'm like, well, just be patient, because I think at WrestleMania, you might be singing a different tune. So I think 100% where we sit right now, Rhea will beat Charlotte at WrestleMania and become women's champion. Also, they're starting to set up the Elimination Chamber matches, by the way. So on Raw, we saw the qualifiers for the men's chamber match, which will be, as we predicted, for the United States title, because Roman holds both championship belts, which means there's really no reason to have a men's chamber match unless you put a secondary title on the line, which will be the U.S. title. So Theory is going to defend his title against Bronson Reed, Seth Rollins, and Johnny Gargano, all of which qualified on Monday Night Raw, and two more men to be determined. So I think we have a couple of qualifying matches this Monday. That's right, we do, because that was also set up on Raw. One of them is going to be Angelo Dawkins versus Damian Priest. Damian Priest will win that. I'm certain of it. And the other one is going to be Montez Ford and Elias. Now, this was set up backstage. By the way, Rick Boogs, we saw return at the Royal Rumble. He also returned on Raw and had a match which he won. Then he's backstage with the Street Profits, where they are talking about their qualifying matches next week, and Elias shows up. So they talk about Dawkins' match with Priest, and then Elias and Boogs. Elias kind of throws a little bit of shade at Boogs, and I'm like, the music thing, the tie-in there. And Elias is going to be facing Montez next week on Raw for a chance to qualify for the Chamber, or to qualify for the Chamber. So that paints a pretty clear picture to me. Priest is going to beat Dawkins, right? Montez is going to beat Elias. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Montez beats Elias with help from Rick Boogs. I think Rick Boogs and Elias are going to start off in a feud with each other, and that feud is going to evolve into a tag team, just like Sheamus and Cesaro and a lot of teams that they've done in the past. I feel like these two will feud first, team later, and form some sort of fun rock duo as a tag team. I think that's in the future of Boogs and Elias, but first they have to have a little singles feud and they have to hate each other. So I think a good way to kick that off, since Elias threw shade at Boogs on Monday, Boogs comes out this week on Raw, and costs Elias the match. Montez qualifies, and now you got WWE getting their look at Montez by himself. I think Montez will be in the Chamber, Dawkins will not, and that will be WWE's, I don't know, maybe idea of what a singles run for Montez will look like. Putting him in that chamber, you know he's going to dive off of a pod or climb up to the fucking ceiling and do a 450 or something insanely athletic. He's going to have a moment in that chamber, and I think the chamber could be the beginning of what eventually becomes a pretty successful singles run for Montez Ford. That's my predictions for this coming Monday. Last night's SmackDown, we got to talk about that. This was a pretty fun show, I must say. Now, of course, I was tuning in because I wanted to see what was going to go on with the Bloodline and Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn and Jey Uso, because one thing we got to remember is that Jey Uso walked out on the Bloodline at the Royal Rumble. This story is just as much about him as it is about Sami and Roman. A lot of people were pointing that out, like, this is Jay's story too. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. I don't think anybody's debating that Jey is a very big part. He is right at the center of this whole thing. And I don't think anybody really ever debated that, so I don't know why so many people are reminding fans of that. We know that. And I think one cool thing about this whole storyline is that everybody plays their part. I mean, at the end of this thing, Sami's going to come out better. Jay's going to come out better. Solo is going to come out as a huge star, I think. And, of course, Roman has a lot going on, too. Who knows what his future holds outside of the Bloodline, how long the Bloodline will last, if it will eventually implode and the wheels will come off, and that will lead to Roman's demise and losing the belt and losing control of his Bloodline, of the Wise Man, and everything kind of crumbles at the same time, maybe with a lot of help from Sami Zayn or whatever. It's been great. It's been so good. So I was really interested to tune in to see what they were going to do. So Heyman and Roman arrive right off the bat. They pull up to the back parking garage area there. Kayla Braxton is there waiting for them, and she asks about Jey Uso, and they basically just blow her off and head into the arena. The show starts with a fun tag team match between Braun Strowman and Ricochet taking on Imperium. Strowman and Ricochet won this match. It was super fun, and I think these two guys might get over. I think it's just beautiful that Triple H has stuck this asshole Strowman with the flippiest motherfucker in the company after everything that Strowman has said. But now that they're together, they're a pretty good team. Strowman looks like he's having fun out there, and I think they're entertaining to watch, and this could be something. Strowman's, inability to think before he speaks could actually cause him to fall ass backwards into a push. And that's good for him, because teaming him with Ricochet, a big guy and a little flippy guy, they can do some fun stuff. They have been doing some fun stuff, and that was a big win they got over Imperium. And I'd have no problem if they wanted to actually belt up Strowman and Ricochet. Ricochet's quite a big step up from Nicholas, I would say, wouldn't you? How cool was the NASCAR stuff? Holy shit, I guess NASCAR's up at the LA Coliseum, or they were, for a big race, and they had Rey and Dominic there. So Rey Mysterio was there with the New Day, talking to Michael Waltrip. Of course, the Judgment Day shows up. Dominic shows up, talking trash, dropping Ricky Bobby lines. I wake up every day, I piss excellence, stuff like that. And then Rey Mysterio goes, hey, why don't we have a race? I'll kick your ass just like I used to kick your ass when we raced go-karts. And they both get in the cars accompanied by a NASCAR driver, and they're driving around. They even have it set up, the graphics like you would see on a NASCAR race, just cross promotion here. WWE's done stuff with the NASCAR, with bowling, and with a lot of other Fox and FS1 content and everything. So it was pretty funny. But hearing the trash talk between father and son on the headset was pretty funny. It was pretty damn hilarious. And in the end, Rey Mysterio wins. He beats his son in the driving game. Finn Balor's very angry. Finn Balor wearing something ridiculous, got a Jake Hager hat on. It was way more fun than I thought. Give me a father versus son luchador wrestler NASCAR race over a match named after Mountain Dew any day of the week. Any day of the week. That was fun. I actually like that more than if I would have read about this, like in the results, like if I didn't watch SmackDown and I just read that they did a NASCAR thing with Rey and Dominic, I wouldn't have even watched it. I would have said, that's stupid. But watching it was actually not stupid. It was very, very fun. Charlotte Flair defended her SmackDown Women's title, speaking of Charlotte, against Sonya Deville. They've been building this match up for a couple of weeks. Charlotte successfully retains here, tapping out Sonya to the figure 8, and I do believe she had a few words to say about Rhea Ripley on SmackDown, probably something like, please don't kill me. Backstage again with Roman and the Bloodline. Now Roman asks Jimmy if he's talked to Jay, and Jimmy's like, no. He's like, come on, man, you haven't talked to him? Don't lie to me. And Jimmy's like, I'm telling you, I've not talked to him. Solo also says he's not talked to him either, but Jimmy assures Roman that Jay will be here. He'll be in the building tonight. So Roman's like, okay, or whatever. Then we get the Viking Raiders facing the Brawling Brutes. Viking Raiders pick up the win. So I like the Brutes more, but the Viking Raiders got the win there. After the match, they were attacked in the aisleway by Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, who wanted them a piece of the Brutes. And I guess there has been some talk now of maybe Sheamus and Drew being involved in a triple threat with Gunther for the IC at Mania, which could work, especially if you don't want to beat Gunther. You don't want to have him, you don't want him to be pinned, but you also want to give Sheamus his Intercontinental Championship that he is yet to win in all of his years in the company. Maybe that's one way to do it, but I was kind of okay with the Sheamus and Gunther one-on-one match. I think Gunther can afford a loss to Sheamus on the grandest stage and still go on to have a very, very successful and world championship career in the company. I don't think it would harm him or bury him in any way to lose to Sheamus, but they might be going in the IC title direction there. We had a rundown or a recap of the Mountain Dew match as well, and then they cut to a quick shot of Bray Wyatt sitting in a chair. Uncle Howdy was there, and I think Wyatt like spun around and looked, so that was creepy. Natalya, of all people, also qualified for the Women's Chamber match. Now, I don't know if I read the Women's Chamber participants earlier. No, I did not, but they are qualifying right now for the Women's Chamber match at EC to determine who Bianca Belair's challenger will be for the Raw Women's title. So Natalya won a fatal four-way to qualify. She beat Zelina, Shotzi, and Shayna to advance there. And I believe that now puts Nikki Cross, Raquel Rodriguez, Asuka, Liv Morgan, and Natalya rounding out the chamber. One more spot to be determined, and the winner of that will face Bianca Belair for the title at WrestleMania. And right now, my money is on Asuka. I think it should be Asuka, but then again, looking at someone like Raquel Rodriguez, I could kind of see it being her as well. I think Asuka or Raquel are the front runners now. Raquel might make an interesting opponent for Bianca Belair, but I think they're both baby faces, and I'm not sure how that's going to work. So I think Asuka so far might be the front runner, although she's a baby face too. Not sure how this is going to work, but I think my heart is with Asuka. So finally, in the main event segment last night of SmackDown, so good. So good. So the best was backstage first. Roman and Heyman are back there. Heyman tells Roman that Jay's phone went straight to voicemail. Jimmy and Solo show back up, and they're like, look, man, we can't get a hold of him. We can't find him. He's not answering his phone. We've looked everywhere. He's just not here, man. Sorry. Like, what do you want us to do? So then Roman is like, you know what, guys? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go in the bus. The wise man has pre-ordered a bunch of catering. It's catered. It's delicious. You got steaks. You got sushi. It's a bounty of food and deliciousness. I want you to go to the bus and y'all eat. Enjoy yourself. I'm going to go out to the ring and take care of some business. And I'm like, oh, yes. I'm like, Bloodline is eating sushi and Roman's by himself. This is going to be good. What's going to happen? Who's going to come out? Who's going to attack him? What's going to happen? So you knew something was going to go on, especially with Roman now heading to the ring with 14 minutes left in the show. And you know he's not going to come out there and cut, a promo for 14 fucking straight minutes. So Roman comes to the ring. He does talk about Cody first and even gives Cody a little credit. And like, Cody is somebody who does deserve my attention. I mean, he basically said he was done with Sami after the Royal Rumble. He said that Sami used the Bloodline. It was so good. It reminded me a lot of there's a famous YouTube video about the Karate Kid where Daniel is the real bully, and it lays out the entire Karate Kid movie and does a great job of making you believe that Daniel really is the little shit that caused all of this. And Roman does an excellent job of kind of laying that out. And he's like, Sami used the Bloodline. He used my family for personal gain. And when obviously this is all the opposite, but to hear Roman Reigns' explanation from his perspective, and that's what we've always said, and not only in wrestling, but in movies, if you want to write a good movie, make every character right. Think about it. Go back and watch some of the better movies ever. Yes, you need protagonists and antagonists, but when every character is right, that's kind of when it makes the story really, really good. And same thing with heels. they have to believe what they're saying is true. And Roman really kind of did. I mean, he was presenting it to the fans like, we should be believing this shit. It's obvious. Sami was using us, and I took care of Sami. I dealt with Sami, you know, but he doesn't deserve any more of my attention. Cody does, because he actually won the Royal Rumble, and he actually does have a championship match at WrestleMania. So as Roman is talking, then we get the black hooded figure jumping in the ring and attacking Roman Reigns, beating him up, takes the hood off, reveals it's Sami Zayn, and he's actually got Roman Reigns down, but Roman is able to fight back on Sami Zayn, and he gets Sami down. He goes to the outside of the ring to grab a chair, and when he comes back in the ring, he's speared by Sami Zayn, and now Sami is on top of Roman. Finally, Solo and Jimmy all the way back in the bus with mouths full of sushi and steaks. They see what's happening. They run out there and attack Sami, and poor Sami is now finding himself in the same situation he was in at the Royal Rumble, being absolutely annihilated by the Bloodline with nobody there to help him. And he was in the corner. They had him laid up in the corner, and Roman is talking to him. And by the way, Sami challenges Roman for the Universal title. I should have said that. Actually challenges him for the Universal title. I want your championship, or whatever he said to him, which really popped the crowd. So after the Bloodline beats down Sami, Roman's in his face as Sami's laying it was the thumbnail of this video. Sami laying there all bent and head snapped in the corner, and Roman holding both belts in his face. And he goes, and you got your match. And he told him, you got your match at the Elimination Chamber. I'm going to beat you and annihilate you in front of your family, in front of your parents, because Elimination Chamber is in Montreal. And that match is now official. SmackDown goes off the air with Sami laying broken and beaten. And now it's going to be Roman Reigns defending the Universal title against Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber in Montreal. Holy crap, man. It's setting us up for some amazing stuff. So it still remains to be seen what WWE is going to do. It's not uncommon. They have done it before. They have done a title change right before WrestleMania before. Eddie Guerrero famously beat Brock at No Way Out, remember? The Rock beat Kurt Angle at No Way Out. They have done some last-minute title changes. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but at the same time, when you look at what they're doing, this really seems like they are holding their course of what they have had planned all along. And I think all the way far back as War Games, they knew this would be the scenario here. And they, I believe, have set up a great match with Sami and Roman Reigns, and Jey Uso is going to play a big role in this. Most fans are saying the same thing. Everybody's kind of predicting the same thing. So nobody really called it here, because we are calling this. And what it looks like they're going to do is have Jey Uso finally show up, cost Sami the match, choose the Bloodline over Sami. Roman retains, goes into WrestleMania, and now you can have Owens and Sami face the Usos for the tag team titles. And a lot of people want to see this be the main event of night one. And I think that would be perfect. It would be a great match. And what a moment for Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn to have together, these two best friends that came up together through the business together and have had rivalries and alliances for, you know, close to 20 years in the business. Being able to win this, have this moment together at WrestleMania would be pretty awesome for them. So I have no problem with that at all, with that direction. I think that sounds marvelous. But I also don't think WWE expected Sami to get over to the degree that he did, to where I think they might need to consider maybe putting the belt on Sami at some point, maybe even after WrestleMania, or maybe Sami has something to do with Roman losing to Cody or whatever. Or maybe Cody grants Sami Zayn the first title shot after he wins. I don't know what they're going to do there, but right now it seems like the Usos versus Owens and Sami match seems likely. Now, Kevin Owens is somebody we did not see last night. At some point, Owens is going to have to come back out as well. And I think maybe if you keep Owens absent and Jey both absent until Elimination Chamber, that would be perfect. But man, that would mean Owens would come back at the Chamber to help Sami to an enormous pop, only to fail, because you have to remember Roman apparently is going to have to walk out of Elimination Chamber here as the champion. So the way I feel like this is set up is that Sami's execution is really going to happen, because a lot of fans are saying things like, how are you going to get the fans to not boo Cody because of Sami. Well, you can accomplish that at the Elimination Chamber. If you're worried about fans booing Cody because they want Sami, then you can book the Chamber match in the main event to where that's not going to be a problem for them. You know what I mean? Like if they just completely annihilate and destroy Sami Zayn and the Bloodline beats him, Montreal's pissed, fans are pissed. Man, they should have put the belt on Sami. I don't think the heat will go to Cody for that. I think the heat will go on Roman maybe in the Bloodline. So maybe then when Cody does win the title at WrestleMania, it makes the fans happy because they're pissed what Roman did to Sami. Maybe that's WWE's way of thinking about it here. But I think Jay will probably reunite with the Bloodline and help destroy Sami and Kevin Owens, who I also assume will be out there leading to the tag team title match at WrestleMania. That sounds great. If they don't do that, then I don't know what they do instead. If they don't do that and they actually put the belt on Sami at Elimination Chamber, Kevin Owens comes out and costs Roman Reigns the match, and maybe Jey Uso doesn't show up or something happens, Roman loses, and now it's Sami and Cody at WrestleMania, that would fuck everything up. You know, what does Roman do? What does Owens do? So it seems unlikely. And even though I think this Elimination Chamber in Montreal is going to be one of the most anticipated main events ever because of the crowd involvement, the emotion, the story, it does feel like it's got somewhat of a predictable ending. The only way, we just don't know how they're going to execute the ending. That's all. So Jay will be involved. Owens will be involved. But in the end, I guess Roman will retain and still go on to Mania to face Cody Rhodes. Unless between now and then, WWE has some plan B in place if they realize, hey, we got another Daniel Bryan situation on our hands here with Sami Zayn. We absolutely have to go with him. He's who the fans want. How do we do it in a way that makes sense? And shouldn't be too hard because fans love Sami. But right now, based on what we're seeing, how the storyline is progressing on TV, that's the picture it's painting for us now, is for Roman to retain, beating Sami, help with Jay. Sami will be executed right there in Montreal. That won't even have the fans worry too much about the Cody Rhodes stuff, because if you have Jay play a big role in this and Jay is the reason that Sami loses, then the focus will be on Jay and the Usos and getting revenge on the Usos and Sami and Owens moment. And if the fans see that as being the match and the fans can see that far ahead, I know they don't like to think far ahead and like to think big picture, but if they can kind of envision that scenario of, yes, I'm sure we would all love to see Sami Zayn win the WWE title, but him and Kevin Owens winning the tags in an epic match, possibly even a main event on night one of WrestleMania, would be just as good as a moment, I think, for the two of them, and just as special, and should do enough to satisfy the fans to where we don't sabotage poor Cody. That's the way I'm looking at it. So I'm thinking that with Triple H in charge of creative, he's better suited to see these type of things of, we got a situation here where the fans might turn on us, where Vince is fucking oblivious and he's just going to go with what he's going to do because he doesn't understand anything. Where I think Triple H already notices the same thing we're noticing with Sami Zayn, and they want to be careful how they do that to where it doesn't harm Sami, but also doesn't piss off the fans and doesn't sabotage Cody, and, keep everything, keep the fans as happy as possible, I guess. So that's the deal there. We are getting the match that we kind of figured we would get. Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn at the Chamber. That's going to be good. Coming up in just a couple of weeks. 2 weeks from tomorrow, I think, is the Chamber, right? So that is crazy. Or 2 weeks from today. Is it a Saturday pay-per-view? It might be a Saturday. I forget. Anyway, let me cruise here to the chat. I got to get out of here in just a minute because I have got a night of work ahead of me. Let me make sure I don't miss any supers. Mark Gallan, $5. Thanks again. Cody should bring back the Undisputed Championship design from 2002. No, Cody should not, Mark. I'm kidding. Mark, if you've been on this channel for a while, those of you who have know that I've talked about that belt before, and it's just a generational thing. When it comes to championship belts, here's the rule of thumb. Whatever the championship belt was between the ages of 10 and 20 is probably going to be the belt that you liked. I was ages 10 through 20. I was 11 through 21 for the Winged Eagles history. That's why it's my favorite championship belt. So whatever the belt was when you were between those ages is probably going to be the one you like the best. And a lot of fans always mention the Undisputed title from 2002 as one of their favorites ever. But for some reason, it's one of my least favorites. I never liked that belt. I liked it better than the Spinner, for sure. The Spinner's the all-time worst belt. But that one was not my favorite. I didn't really love the big blue one either, the one that Austin wore right after WrestleMania 14, the one that they changed to after the Winged Eagle. I was never really a fan of any belt they've done since the Winged Eagle because I'm such a schmuck. But even though I wasn't a fan of the 2002 design, I understand why fans like it. And I do like the 2002 design maybe better than the current one they have. I just hate that I just don't need those big W's on a championship belt. I just don't need it. So I'd prefer that over the one we have now, but certainly not my favorite belt of all time. Daniel, appreciate the $5 from you, dude. I'm making Mania plans and would like to meet up to finally meet in person. Hell yeah, DM23. I will be there. We might be doing a lot of meetups at the show itself, and still trying to think of something to do on Friday. And I'm staying just about 3 miles down the road at the Hyatt House down from SoFi Stadium. So we are going to be planning some stuff, Daniel, and stay in touch because we'll be doing some sort of meetups, and I'll have information on that pretty soon for you guys. Other than that, I know, Ben. Everybody loves that belt. Everybody except me. I'm accepting that I'm in the minority. I'm one of the only people that doesn't like that belt, and the only reason I don't love that belt is because I already had great belts before that. I was a wrestling fan long before that 2002 Undisputed Championship came out, and I already got to experience the classic IC, the Big Gold, the Winged Eagle, the WCW television, the tag belts that were around at that time. All that stuff to me was better than that belt that they came out with in 2002. That's just because I was a fan for a lot longer prior to that. So I think usually fans just like what they liked when they were kids. I think we're all like that. And I'm certainly very, very nostalgic. You guys know that. Well, I need to get out of here because I need to be wrapping up and heading out the door in about 10 minutes. The audio to this podcast will be posted on the website and on the podcast sites later tonight. So keep a lookout for that in the next few hours. And of course, don't forget a long one tomorrow. Long doubleheader, starting with a members-only watch-along of WCW Nitro, August 4th, 1997, tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern. And then the plan is at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. We might be 15 to 30 minutes late on that. We're going to start WrestleMania 4. The links to both of those watch-alongs for tomorrow are up on the channel now. Go over there, save them, give them an early like, and I would appreciate it. So that is going to do it for today's edition of the Winged Eagle. It's a pleasure as always, guys. Have a great rest of your Saturday night, and I will catch you tomorrow for a whole lot of rap.